Hello, Tax Sutra viewers. Overall, budget seems to be a very pleasant surprise for a variety of reasons. I think most of us were expecting that there would be emphasis in terms of broadening the tax base, raising the tax rates, including additional levies such as wealth tax, and all forms of rumors were there. Fortunately, none of them came true. Instead, I think the budget has decided to walk on a very reformative path. And when I say reformative path, I meant that there is fiscal expansion being pursued with significant outlay of capital investments as high as 34%. And if you see, there were many schemes that were announced where the outlays were not laid out just for 1 year, but they were outlays for 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. Now, this signifies a very new trend in the budget, which means that the focus is on capital expenditure because that has a multiplier effect in terms of job creation, sending out the right forms of messages to the outside world, as opposed to a historical approach where it was more a cash budget, which means that important revenues that were raised were either going away because of high borrowings and interest charge or because of pensions, so on and so forth. So, from that point of view, it is very reformative. I also think that though we have not seen the final print as to how the overall fiscal deficit has been worked out, a fiscal deficit close to 10% because of the shrinking of the economy should not come as a surprise to any of us, but a very aggressive reduction of less than 7% for fiscal year 21 22, in my view, is ambitious and also predicated on what the economic survey talked about, a 11 plus percent growth rate in 21-22. Also laying down a roadmap for bringing down the fiscal deficit over a 5-year period to 4.5% is also very reformative because that kind of sends the right signal to the foreign investors and the rating agencies. And so overall, very positive. I'm not going to get into the details of the scheme. Several reformative measures, both on the direct and the indirect tax side, in particular, relaxation for small taxpayers, pensioners, dispute resolutions for small and medium taxpayers, completely revamping the settlement commission, bringing out a new authority in place of the authority on advance ruling, doing away majorly with the reopening proceedings, whether from a statute of limitation standpoint, which has been brought down from 6 to 3 years, or from the point of view of this discretion that was given to the officer if he comes to form an opinion, instead being replaced by an inquiry. So many of the good proposals from the direct tax code, which is still not public, have been taken away and introduced in the budget. I also feel that rather than raising the custom tariffs, uh, they have decided to review 400 forms of exemptions and only after public consultation, look at these from October 1. So many positives in the budget. There is really nothing that I can see from a downside standpoint. Uh, Overall, my comment is that if we need to bring down the fiscal deficit, the emphasis clearly is going to be on revenue collection. So that's one thing that will be very, very closely observed, which means that we would need more and more deeper tax administrative reforms. And when I talk about deeper tax administrative reforms, I mean that attitudinal change. So hopefully, the faceless assessment scheme and the faceless appeal scheme, coupled with the spirit of the taxpayer charter, should bring out those efficiencies in the tax administration, and that in turn could lead to a higher rate of tax. One of the other things that I wanted to mention was a focus on non-tax revenues of the government. So typically in a budget, you will see a significant item called divestment proceeds. Invariably, we have been missing those targets for many, many years. But here, monetization of large patches of land are, in my view, very, very reformative. And if those are deployed for creation of capital assets, which is evident from the outlays for various ministries, I think it makes out to be one of the best budgets after many, many years.
Yeah, Mukesh, bhai, thanks so much for that incisive take, especially on the macroeconomic picture. I first heard you on Union Budget in 2004. That was Mr. Chidambaram's budget after almost 7 years, his comeback budget in a way, and that was 17 years ago. Mukesh, bhai, both of us were younger. How when you know 17, 18 years we've seen so many budgets, Mukesh, bhai. How does this feel different from the budgets of yesteryears? Do you think this is bigger, bolder, lays out a broader vision? Let's talk only taxes now. Lays out a broader vision, even on taxes, thematically, faceless, online, e-courts, dispute resolution, small taxpayer, and so on and so forth. Do you think this is one budget which does not miss the woods for the trees on taxes?
Well, I think there have been many reformative budgets. You can talk about the 1991 first budget of economic reforms. You can talk about the dream budget of 1997. I would put 2021 as the same budget. But, Arun, it is not fair to lay down a comparisons because we are dealing with an unprecedented situation from the growth of economy standpoint and how pandemic has impacted India. So it's one thing to say that, just quoting Geeta Gopinath from the IMF, that it's going to take 5 years for India to get back to its growth path. Well, I think that's a realistic estimate. But the question is, what kind of direction are you setting out for yourself to get to that growth path? I think that, in my view, is critical. And this 2021 budget in all forms lays down that growth path. Now, obviously, you can have the 2022 budget be a party spoiler, but I think that the direction has been set for the future budget is very, very critical.
Yeah, Mukesh bhai, as a litigator, and as one of the top litigators on tax matters, tell me, Mukesh bhai, your take in 20 seconds each on these three: reopening of assessments. Will it really lead to a reduction in the writs and litigations? Number two, on doing away with the AAR and replacing it with the board. And third is faceless ITAT, which quite a few people in the last 4-5 hours, whomever I've talked to, seem to be quite skeptical about these three.
So I don't know. I mean, I have heard comments on the faceless ITAT and skepticism of people. Ideally, one should have tried out how the faceless CIT appeal scheme work and then looked at it. But I don't see any harm in making use of digital technology. Now, is it going to be faceless or is it going to be virtual? I feel that based on, we still need to see the scheme. But what it seems like, a national faceless ITAT center is a great idea, even as an administrative mechanisms. How the logistics for a faceless ITAT hearing is going to work is something that we should wait and see before coming to the conclusion. As far as the reopening is concerned, I think that was the most contentious issue. I think that was a section that was invariably invoked upon by tax officials and a major cause of harassment for the taxpayers. So you're now leaving out the small taxpayers, and for big taxpayers, you're instead replacing it with an inquiry. And that inquiry also can be at the instance of the principal chief commissioner. So you're building in some checks and balances. We obviously need to see how this thing pans out. But I have no doubt in my mind that the harassment that many taxpayers saw, the number of writ petitions in the High Court, and the number of high courts that have quashed the reopening proceedings solely on the fact that it exceeded beyond the statute of limitation, all of that is going to come to an end.
The AAR, Mukesh, my last point.
AR, I have always held a view that it had lost its relevance and importance over a decade back. Der aaye, durust aaye, that's all I can say. Government should have done it 8 to 10 years back, but I'm glad that, we have finally got rid of AR.
Thanks so much, Mukesh bhai. Thanks so much. Shooting straight, Butani. Thanks so much, Mukesh bhai. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.